when my daughter-in-law told me to leave her house. I smiled instead of crying. It was not because the moment was easy. It was not because I felt strong. And it was definitely not because I wanted to walk away from my son. Or from the grandchild I barely got to hold. I smiled because I had learned, over the years, that sometimes a soft smile is the only shield an older woman has. When her heart is breaking in front of people who do not understand her. My name is Margaret Lane. And this is the story of the day my son's mother-in-law. A woman I had never fought with, never raised my voice at. Never disrespected. Threw scalding hot tea at my face. And how a simple phone call. A call I never thought I would make in my entire life. Changed everything. Some moments stay with you even when you don't want them to. The smell of the tea. The sound of the cup hitting the floor. The way the house fell quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. And the way my son, Daniel, looked at me as if his heart had cracked open. But let me start from the beginning. Because stories like this do not begin with hot tea. Or with anger. Or with broken trust. They begin with love. With hope. With mothers who dream small, quiet dreams for their children. Dreams of peace. Dreams of family. Dreams of Sunday dinners and grandchildren's laughter. I never expected my life to twist the way it did. I never expected to feel like an outsider in my own son's home. And I never expected that one day, a woman who barely knew me would look at me with hatred so sharp. It felt like the room had frozen around us. This story is not loud. It is soft, like tired footsteps on a wooden floor. It is emotional, yes. But not from anger. From disappointment. From confusion. From the long, slow ache a mother feels when she watches her child drift further and further away. And does not know how to reach for him. But even in the quietest stories, there is a turning point. And mine. Well, it came unexpectedly. With a phone call. A call that made me realize who I was. And who I refused to be. A call that changed the way my son saw me. That changed the way my daughter-in-law saw me. And yes, even changed the woman who burned my face. So let me tell you everything. Slowly. Carefully. Like the soft turning of pages in an old book. Because sometimes, the stories we whisper are the ones that help someone else feel less alone. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. The kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches. And Sunday mornings smelled like coffee and warm biscuits. Life wasn't complicated then. People worked hard, spoke kindly, and believed in looking after one another. I married my husband, Thomas, when I was 25. He was quiet, thoughtful, and had the kind of smile that made other people smile with him. We built a simple life. A small home with faded blue shutters. A little garden in the back. And one child who became the center of our world. Our son, Daniel, was born on a warm July morning. He was gentle from the start. The sort of child who cried softly. As if he didn't want to bother anyone. He grew up kind, well-mannered. And always willing to help me in the kitchen. Even as a boy, he had a softness in his heart. I worried the world might be too harsh for him. But Thomas would laugh and say, "He'll be fine, Maggie. Soft hearts make strong men." He was right. Daniel grew into a thoughtful, responsible man. He studied engineering. Got a stable job in a nearby city. And called me every Sunday without fail. When he was 30, he brought home the woman who would change all our lives. Emily Carter. Emily was bright, modern, confident. She walked into a room like she already knew the outcome of every conversation. She was polite, but not warm. Friendly, but guarded. I didn't mind. Not everyone is raised the same way. Not everyone shows love in familiar shapes. What mattered was that she loved my son. And he, without question, adored her. Where things began to tangle was with her mother. Lynda Carter. Lynda was different. Sharp with her words. Possessive of her daughter. And deeply suspicious of anyone who might interfere in their lives. The first day we met, she sized me up. Like a shopkeeper deciding whether an item had any value. "Oh," she had said, her voice flat. "So you're Daniel's mother. Not nice to meet you. Not I've heard wonderful things." Just that. But I brushed it aside. Some people need time, I told myself. Some walls take patience to soften. Over the next year, Daniel and Emily married in a simple ceremony. Not too big, not too small. Just enough to fill the room with warmth. Lynda, of course, insisted on planning almost everything. I stepped back, not wanting to cause tension. My goal had never been to control my son's life, but to support him while he built his own. After the wedding, things seemed peaceful. Daniel would visit often. Emily would join sometimes. Though she always seemed distant. As if she were balancing invisible weights in her hands. Then Emily became pregnant. And everything changed. At first, I tried to help. I offered to cook meals. Buy baby clothes. And be there whenever needed. But Lynda shut those doors quietly. One by one. She told Emily. "It's better if I handle these things. Your mother-in-law doesn't know your style." She told Daniel. "Let Maggie rest. Pregnancy is not her responsibility." She told me nothing. She simply made sure that my presence was no longer needed. I kept my distance. Hoping things would improve after the baby was born. Hoping that once Emily held her child, she would soften. And maybe the walls around her would crumble a little. But when baby Oliver arrived, I felt farther away than ever. I saw him only twice in the first 2 months. Each visit felt like I was entering someone else's home. Not my son's. The rooms were beautiful but cold. Like picture frames without warm hands to hold them. When I held Oliver for the first time, I felt a love so deep. It made my chest ache. But even in that moment, I could feel Lynda watching me. As if I might drop him. Or handle him the wrong way. I tried to ignore it. I tried to stay kind. But kindness sometimes looks like weakness. To people who do not understand it. And so, slowly, the distance between me and my son grew. Not because he wanted it. But because he was trapped between 2 worlds. His mother. And the new family that demanded all of him. I never blamed him. Children grow. They change. They form their own lives. But the ache of being pushed out is a pain only a mother understands. And that pain was only the beginning. Things reached a quiet breaking point. On a gray Saturday morning in early spring, Daniel called and said, "Mom, Emily wants you to come over. We thought maybe you could spend a little time with Oliver." I remember the exact moment the words landed. The way they painted a small, hopeful light inside me. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "Of course I'll come." I baked blueberry muffins. The kind Daniel loved as a child. I wrapped a small knitted blanket I had made for Oliver. And I put on my nicest cardigan. Wanting to look presentable but not intrusive. When I arrived at their house, everything felt strangely still. Emily opened the door. her expression unreadable. "Hi, Margaret," she said. "Come in." Her tone was polite but tight, as if each word was being carefully measured. Emily stepped back to let me inside, but I could feel the distance in the way she moved. The house was clean, quiet, and filled with the soft smell of baby lotion. A faint lullaby played from a monitor on the kitchen counter. I smiled gently and held out the small tin of muffins. "I brought something for you all," I said softly. Emily looked at the tin, hesitated for a moment, and then accepted it with a polite nod. "Thank you," she said. "I'll put them on the counter." Her voice wasn't rude, but it wasn't warm either. It was neutral. Like she was speaking to a stranger she didn't know what to do with. I told myself to stay calm, to just be present, to be grateful for whatever time I got with my grandson. Daniel came down the stairs a moment later, his hair slightly messy, and his eyes tired in that new parent sort of way. "Mom," he said, smiling the way he used to. He walked over and hugged me. A real hug. The kind that almost made me tear up. "You look good," I whispered. "And exhausted." He laughed softly. "Both can be true." We shared a small moment of warmth, something I had missed for a long time. Then he said, "Come on, Mom. Oliver's awake. I want you to see him." His words filled me with joy. I followed him upstairs to the nursery. The room was bright, with soft yellow walls, and little clouds painted along the ceiling. A mobile slowly turned above the crib, playing a gentle melody. There he was. My grandson. My sweet little Oliver. When Daniel lifted him into my arms, my heart softened like warm clay. Oliver blinked up at me, his tiny fingers curling around the edge of my sweater. "You're getting so big," I whispered. "You look just like your daddy." Daniel's smile faded slightly. Not in sadness, but in something else. A quiet worry. Attention. I wasn't sure. We sat in the rocking chair, me holding Oliver close, Daniel beside us. "Mom," he said quietly. "There's something we need to talk about today." My heart paused. Just a beat. A small, silent beat. "Oh?" I said softly. "All right." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he watched Oliver, as if gathering his courage. Before he could continue, a sharp voice echoed from downstairs. "Daniel. Emily. Can someone help me with these bags?" It was Linda. Of course it was. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, like a man bracing for a cold wind. "I didn't know she was coming," he murmured. But of course she was. Linda never missed a chance to be involved in any moment that wasn't hers. Emily called back. "We're coming, Mom." Daniel gently took Oliver from my arms and handed him back to the crib. "Let's head down," he said. My chest tightened. I knew I was losing the moment, but I followed quietly. I always seemed to be following quietly those days. The atmosphere changes. Linda stood in the kitchen, her purse on the counter, her arms crossed as if she were inspecting the house she already controlled. When she saw me, her eyebrows lifted. Not in surprise, but in annoyance. "Oh," she said. "You're here." I smiled. A soft, fragile smile. "Yes. Daniel invited me." She pursed her lips. "Well, I suppose that's fine." Emily stepped toward her mother, touching her arm lightly. They whispered for a moment. Too quietly for me to hear. But I didn't need to hear the words. I already understood the tone. I moved quietly toward the living room, giving them space. I didn't want to intrude. I didn't want trouble. I never did. But trouble, unfortunately, sometimes comes looking for you. Even when you are walking gently. Daniel came beside me. "Mom," he said softly. "We wanted to talk to you today because we've been thinking about boundaries." The word hit me like cold rain. Boundaries? He nodded. "Not in a bad way," he said quickly. "It's just, things have been stressful. We're tired. And Emily feels. Well, we all feel. That sometimes there's too much pressure from both sides." "Both sides?" I repeated. "You mean from me?" From his own mother. The woman who had been invited over only twice in 2 months. I didn't say the words out loud. I just looked at him. My expression soft. Trying not to break. Daniel continued. "We just want some structure. Some space. Some predictability." I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said quietly. "If that's what you need, I'll respect it." He looked relieved. So relieved. That it hurt me in ways I didn't expect. Before he could respond, Linda cut into the conversation. "Yes, Margaret," she said sharply. "I think space is best. For the baby. For Emily. For everyone." Daniel frowned. "Mom, this isn't." Linda raised a hand. "No, Daniel. We need to be honest. Your mother is. Well. Overbearing." The word sliced through me. With a coldness I had not felt in years. Overbearing. Me? The woman who barely visited. Who cooked quietly. Spoke softly. And tried desperately not to step in anyone's way. I swallowed the hurt. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I whispered. Emily watched silently. Her expression shifting. Guilt? Shame? Something else? I couldn't tell. Then Linda stepped closer. Her voice was low. Her eyes sharp. "Some grandmothers don't know their place." Daniel stiffened. "Mom," he started. But I gently touched his arm. "It's all right," I whispered. "It's fine. I don't want to cause any trouble." But trouble had already walked straight into me. And it wasn't finished yet. Not even close. The cup of tea. I moved toward the kitchen to get a glass of water. My throat felt tight. And I needed a moment alone. Linda followed me. I could hear her footsteps behind me. Sharp and impatient. Like she was chasing an argument. Emily stayed behind with Daniel. I hoped. I truly hoped. That she would say something kind. Something gentle. Something to soften the air. But she didn't. I opened the cupboard. Took out a glass. And turned toward the kettle. Linda stood beside me. Her arms crossed. "You need to stop showing up like this," she said suddenly. "You make Emily anxious. You make the baby overstimulated. You make everything harder." I took a slow breath. "Linda," I said softly. "I was invited today. I didn't come unannounced." She scoffed. "As if Daniel would ever say no to you." The kettle clicked off. The water boiling. I reached for a tea bag. My hands steady even though my heart was not. Linda stepped closer. Her voice low and cold. "Just stay away. You don't belong in this house." I turned toward her. The kitchen quiet except for the faint lullaby playing from the monitor. "I'm not trying to replace you," I whispered. "I'm just trying to be a grandmother." Her face tightened with something sharp. Something ugly. "Grandmother," she snapped. "You barely know that child." My chest rose and fell slowly. I did not answer. I didn't want a fight. Linda reached for a mug. She poured boiling water into it. The steam rising between us. Then she turned. Held the mug in her hand. And said the words. "That would change everything. Women like you need to learn your place." I opened my mouth to speak. Gently. Carefully. But she stepped forward. And the mug slipped. Or maybe it didn't slip. Maybe it was thrown. Even now. I am not sure. All I remember is the burning. The sharp, shocking heat. Spreading across my cheek. The scream I swallowed. So the baby wouldn't hear. The way the mug shattered on the floor. Splashing tea everywhere. Then silence. A deep, horrible silence. Daniel ran in first. Then Emily. Their eyes widened. At the sight of me. My face red. My hand pressed against my skin. Tea dripping onto the tiles. "Oh my God. Mom!" Daniel shouted. But it was Emily. Who said the words. No one expected. "Mom. What did you do?" And Linda. With no shame in her voice. Said slowly. "She needs to leave." Time did not move normally in that moment. It felt thick, heavy, stretched out like warm honey. I could hear my heartbeat louder than anything else. Louder than the dripping tea. Louder than Daniel's footsteps. Louder than Linda's shallow breathing. I kept my hand against my cheek. Feeling the sting deepen. Feeling the heat spread slowly like a wave. I did not cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because something in me felt frozen. Still. Quiet. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the years of biting my tongue to keep the peace. Maybe it was the mother in me. Still trying not to make a scene in front of my son. Daniel reached me first. "Mom, oh God, Mom, are you okay?" His voice trembled. Full of panic. I nodded faintly. "I'm all right, sweetheart," I whispered. My voice sounded different. Thin. Almost distant. But before Daniel could say another word, Linda stepped forward. As if the moment belonged to her. "Daniel," she said sharply. She was in my way. It was an accident. These things happen. Daniel's head snapped toward her. "An accident?" he repeated, stunned. "You burned her." Linda lifted her chin. "It's boiling water." If she wasn't standing so close. Emily cut in, her voice small. "Mom, you weren't even making tea." Linda didn't respond. She just stared at me. As if daring me to speak. As if the whole situation was somehow my fault. Emily stepped closer. Her eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. Guilt? Confusion? Fear? "Margaret," she said softly. I don't know what happened. But maybe you should take a break. Go home and rest. We'll talk about this later." "Take a break?" Daniel whispered. His voice cracking. "She's injured. We need to put something on her face." Linda exhaled loudly. "Oh, please. It's a little splash. Cold water will fix it." She moved toward me. As if she were going to guide me out of the house. As if she had the right to touch me after what she'd done. Daniel stepped between us so fast that Linda actually flinched. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't touch her." Something shifted in the air then. Something deep. Something fragile. Because for the first time, Daniel wasn't standing with Linda. He wasn't trying to keep the peace. He wasn't forcing a smile. He was defending me. And I could see the moment Linda realized it too. Her mouth tightened. Her face reddened. Her eyes narrowed. Emily moved beside Daniel. Her voice thin with tension. "Let's all calm down," she whispered. "This is getting out of hand." But Linda wasn't calming down. She wasn't stepping back. She was stepping forward. And her words cut deeper than the burn on my skin. "I am the grandmother who actually helps," she spat. "Not the one who shows up twice and acts like a saint. You're not needed here, Margaret. You never were." Something inside me cracked then. Something old. Something tired. Something that had been holding on longer than it should have. All the birthdays I wasn't invited to. All the phone calls that ended too quickly. All the holidays Linda claimed should just be for immediate family. All the times I held my breath to avoid conflict. All the moments I swallowed my own feelings, just to keep peace in a home that was no longer mine. They all came rushing back at once. But instead of anger, my heart filled with something softer. Sadness. A quiet sadness that settled deep inside me. Daniel turned toward me, his voice trembling. "Mom. I'm taking you to urgent care." I touched his arm gently. "No," I whispered. "It's just a small burn. I'll put something on it when I get home." "But," I said, "it's fine, Daniel." He fell silent, his eyes full of worry and helplessness. I looked at Emily then. She would not meet my eyes. She stood next to her mother, her fingers twisting nervously, her lips pressed tightly together. I had hoped, deeply hoped, that she would step forward, that she would choose kindness, that she would choose fairness, that she would choose, at the very least, to acknowledge what had just happened. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "I think it's best if we all take some space today." I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I understood what she was really saying. Leave. That was the message. The same message I had felt for months. Only this time, it was spoken in a way that could not be misunderstood. I turned to Daniel. "Sweetheart," I said softly. "I'm going to go home. It's all right. We'll talk when things calm down." His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "I never wanted this." I cupped his cheek gently, ignoring the sting in my hand. "I know," I whispered. "You're a good man, Daniel. A good son. But sometimes, life gets heavy. And people lose their way." He blinked hard, trying not to cry. Emily cleared her throat. "We'll call you later, Margaret," she murmured. But we all knew she wouldn't. Linda stepped aside, arms crossed, watching with a cold satisfaction that made the room feel even smaller. I walked past her slowly, my steps quiet on the floor. The kitchen tiles felt colder than usual. The air felt heavier. Just before I reached the door, Linda muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear, "Some women never know when their job is done." I paused. Not because I wanted to confront her. Not because I wanted to argue. But because her words landed with a truth She didn't intend. Maybe. Maybe my job was done. Maybe I had held on too long. To something that no longer made room for me. I breathed out slowly. Then I opened the door. The outside air hit my burned cheek. A mix of cool relief and sharp pain. The sky was overcast. Soft gray clouds stretching above the quiet street. A breeze rustled through the small row of trees, lining the sidewalk. As I stepped onto the porch, I heard Daniel call out behind me. "Mom, wait." I turned. He stood in the doorway. His shoulders tense. His eyes shining with guilt and sadness. "I'm coming by tonight," he said firmly. "I don't care what anyone says. I'm coming to check on you." Before he could say more, Linda grabbed his arm. "Daniel," she hissed. "We need to talk about this." He pulled his arm away. Not roughly, but with purpose. "No," he said quietly. "Not now." That one sentence. Simple, soft, but full of meaning, hung in the air between all of us. I nodded at him. A small smile trembling on my lips. "I'll be okay," I whispered. Then I walked down the steps. And toward my car. Every step felt heavy. Not from physical pain. But from the weight. Of a mother realizing. She no longer had a place. In the home she once imagined. Would feel like family. I got into my car. Closed the door gently. And sat there for a long moment. My hands rested on the steering wheel. My burned cheek throbbed softly. My heart felt heavier than I had ever known. I whispered to myself. Just a small, breathy truth. I don't belong there anymore. The realization was quiet. But it settled deep. I turned the engine on. Backed out of the driveway. And as I drove away, I saw the front door close behind Daniel. And then I saw something else. Through the narrow crack of the curtains. Linda's face. Watching me leave. Her expression calm. Satisfied. As if she had finally removed a piece from the board she never wanted there in the first place. I drove home in silence. No radio. No music. Only the soft sound of the wind. And the distant echo of something breaking gently inside me. But I did not know. Not yet. That this moment was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of a choice I never thought I would make. A choice that would make every person in that house see me differently. A choice that would start with one phone call. A phone call that would change everything. The drive home felt longer than it truly was. The roads were familiar. But that day they felt strange. Empty. Quiet in a way that made me feel smaller than I had in a long time. The trees along the side of the road were bare. Thin branches stretching toward the soft, gray sky. Spring hadn't fully arrived yet. And the world felt caught between seasons. Not winter. And not quite spring either. Much like me. I kept one hand lightly against my cheek. Whenever the car stopped at a light. The sting had settled into a steady burn. Not sharp anymore. But aching. My heart ached the same way. A slow, steady hurt. That I couldn't quite place. When I pulled into my driveway. The house looked exactly the same as always. The pale yellow paint. The white porch railing. The wind chimes Thomas hung years ago. Still moving softly in the breeze. Yet the moment I stepped inside. The entire world felt different. The quiet pressed against me. Like a cold blanket. The air felt heavier. Even the floorboards creaked differently. Under my footsteps. I went straight to the bathroom. And looked at myself in the mirror. The burn was red. Angry. Stretching from my cheekbone toward my jaw. Not blistered. Thank God. But visibly irritated. And shaped like something that should never have touched my skin. I touched it gently. A quiet gasp slipped out. Not from the pain. But from the memory of it. The tea. The heat. The silence. Daniel's voice. Emily's hesitation. Linda's cold stare. I closed my eyes. For a moment. I let myself lean against the sink. And breathe slowly. In. Out. In. Out. My voice, barely more than a whisper, escaped my lips. You have to stay calm, Margaret. After rinsing the side of my face with cool water, I grabbed the small jar of aloe gel I kept beneath the sink. I applied it gently. Little by little. Feeling the sting soften. Then, slowly. I stepped into the living room. The house was too quiet. I had lived in this home for almost 30 years. It had held laughter. Arguments. Birthdays. Anniversaries. And countless memories of my husband. Yet in that moment, it felt less like a home. And more like a waiting room. For someone with no place left to go. I sat down on the couch. And folded my hands in my lap. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Outside, a bird chirped. Its voice small but clear. And then. The tears finally came. They didn't fall loudly. They weren't dramatic. They came quietly. Slipping down my cheeks. Like little raindrops. That had been waiting too long. I cried for the pain. I cried for the moment. But most of all, I cried for the years leading to it. The years of being careful. Polite. Gentle. And patient. The years of hoping. That kindness was enough. To keep a family together. I wiped my tears with the edge of my sleeve. When the crying slowed. A stillness settled over me. A thoughtful quiet. It wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. For the first time. I could see everything clearly. Linda didn't want me in their lives. And Emily. Even if she didn't feel the same. Didn't know how to stand against her mother. Daniel was trapped. Pulled in two directions. Trying to be a good husband. And a good son. At the same time. And I had been trying to hold on to something. That no longer had room for me. The painful truth. Settled into my heart. Like a quiet stone. I have to do something. I whispered to myself. I can't let it continue like this. But what could I do? What power did a quiet, aging woman have? Against a woman like Linda. I stood up. And walked to the window. The sky was still gray. But the clouds were shifting slowly. Letting tiny bits of light peek through. The world was changing. Even if only a little. I took a deep breath. There are moments in life. When a person has to choose. Suffer in silence. Or finally speak. And that day. After years of being quiet. I chose to speak. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Not with anger. But with truth. I picked up my phone. From the coffee table. My hands trembled. Not because I was unsure. But because I was finally sure. I scrolled through my contacts. Until I found the number. A number I never thought I would call. Linda Carter. I stared at the screen. My reflection in the black surface looked older than I remembered. Tired. Hurt. But steady. I pressed the call button. The phone rang twice. And then she answered. Hello. Her voice was sharp. Already impatient. I didn't speak yet. I closed my eyes. Took a slow breath. And let the steadiness rise in me. Like a quiet tide. Finally, I said. Linda. It's Margaret. A beat of silence. Oh. Her tone shifted. Not to kindness. But to something cautious. Measured. Is everything all right? I let another breath out slowly. No, I said softly. Everything is not all right. Another pause. I could hear her exhale sharply. Well, if this is about earlier. It is, I replied gently. My voice firm. But calm. She fell silent again. I could picture her face. Tight, defensive. Waiting for me to either yell. Or beg. Or collapse. But I did none of those things. Linda, I began softly. I have never wanted conflict. Not with you. Not with Emily. Not with anyone. She said nothing. All I ever wanted was to love my son. And be a gentle part of my grandson's life. Still nothing. But today crossed a line. I continued, my voice steady. And I can't ignore it. A tiny, sharp breath on the other end. You burned me, Linda. Tea or no tea. Accident or not. You hurt me. The silence stretched. I didn't fill it. I let it rest between us. Finally, she whispered. A stiff, forced whisper. I told you. It was an accident. Maybe, I said calmly. Or maybe it wasn't. Either way. It cannot happen again. Her voice rose. So what do you want, Margaret? Do you want me to apologize? Is that what this is? I closed my eyes and shook my head. Even though she couldn't see me. No, I whispered. I don't want an apology. She exhaled sharply. Surprised. What I want. I continued gently. Is for you to understand. That I will protect myself. And I will not let you push me away. By hurting me. Not physically. Not emotionally. Another silence. This one heavier. Then I said the words. That shifted everything. I spoke with Dr. Allen, my physician. And I will be reporting the incident. Not to punish her. Not to ruin her reputation. But to create a record. A line in the sand. Something undeniable. Linda inhaled sharply. You're reporting me. Her voice was no longer cold. It was panicked. Afraid. Human. Yes, I whispered. Not out of anger. But out of necessity. And Margaret, she stammered. You can't. You can't do that. It will make things complicated. It will. It will tell the truth. I said softly. And the truth needed to be told a long time ago. Another breath. Uneven. Breaking at the edges. You'll destroy my relationship with Emily. She whispered. No, I said gently. You destroyed that yourself today. Another long silence. This one full of cracks. Then. Something I never expected. Please. Linda whispered. Her voice small. Shaken. Nothing like the woman I faced earlier. Please, don't do this. I closed my eyes. Pain stirring in my chest. Linda, I said softly. I am not doing this to you. I am doing this for me. I breathed out slowly. And for Oliver. She inhaled sharply again. Her voice dropped. Barely audible. Will you tell Daniel? Yes, I whispered. I will tell my son the truth. That was the moment. The quiet, fragile moment. When everything shifted. Because Linda's voice broke. Actually broke. Margaret. Please. But I could not protect her from the consequences of her choices. And for the first time in years, I didn't protect her at all. I ended the call. Not angrily. Not abruptly. Just quietly. Then I placed the phone on the coffee table. And let out a long breath. I didn't know I had been holding. My hands shook. My heart raced. But something inside me felt stronger than it had in years. I had spoken. I had stood up. Not with anger. But with truth. I knew the coming hours would be hard. I knew Daniel would be caught in the middle. I knew Emily would be confused. And maybe even hurt. But I also knew that silence was no longer an option. As I sat there, hands folded, heart steadying, there was a soft knock on my front door. I froze. The knock came again. Quiet. But urgent. I stood slowly. Walked to the door. And opened it. There, on my porch, stood Daniel. His eyes red. His voice trembling. Mom, he whispered. We need to talk. And with that, the night began. That would change all of our lives. When I opened the door and saw Daniel standing there, I felt a mixture of surprise and sadness ripple through me. He wasn't supposed to come so soon. He wasn't supposed to look so broken. But there he was. My grown son. The little boy I once carried on my hip. Standing on my porch with tears in his eyes. Mom, he whispered. I didn't know where else to go. Those words alone felt like someone gently pressing against a bruise. Painful. But needed. I stepped aside and motioned him in. Come inside, sweetheart. It's cold out there. He walked in slowly. As if the weight on his shoulders made every step harder. I closed the door behind him. And watched him sink into the couch. With a heaviness I hadn't seen in him before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was only the soft ticking of the clock. The faint hum of the refrigerator. And the fragile breathing of a young father. Whose world had cracked open in a single afternoon. I sat beside him. Close enough that he could feel my presence. But not so close that he felt crowded. Daniel, I said gently. I'm okay. A little shaken. And my cheek will hurt for a while. But I'm here. I'm all right. He shook his head slowly. His hands covering his face. No, Mom, he whispered. I saw everything. I heard everything. And I didn't do enough. I placed my hand softly on his shoulder. You did what you could. I whispered. But he pulled his hands away. Revealing eyes filled with grief. And something deeper. No, he said quietly. I didn't. I didn't stop her. I didn't protect you. I didn't make sure you were safe in my own home. The shame in his voice tightened the air around us. My heart softened. Daniel, I whispered. You were in an impossible place. I don't blame you. I've never blamed you. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Like a man trying to understand how kindness could still exist after such a painful day. Mom, he whispered. I heard you. After you left. I looked at him carefully. What do you mean? He let out a slow breath. I heard my mother-in-law talking to Emily. Saying awful things about you. Blaming you. Saying that you needed to be put in your place. A quiet ache tightened inside me. Not because the words were new. But because they were familiar. I stayed silent. And let him continue. And Emily didn't defend you, he whispered. She didn't stand up for you. She didn't say a word. He swallowed hard. That hurt me more than anything. I reached for his hand carefully. And held it gently. Daniel, I whispered. Emily is young. She's overwhelmed. She's stuck between two people she loves. I don't want you to carry anger in your heart because of me. But Daniel shook his head. No, Mom. I'm not angry at Emily. He paused. I'm angry that I let this situation go on so long. A quiet sorrow filled his voice. Mixing with something like determination. I knew there were problems. I knew my mother-in-law didn't like you. I knew she tried to control everything. I just kept hoping it would get better on its own. He rubbed his forehead. But today showed me that hoping isn't enough. I let his words settle between us. Sometimes truth arrives slowly. Like light creeping into a dark room. And sometimes it arrives all at once. Like a window shattering in a storm. Daniel took a long breath. When you left, he said softly. I told Emily I was going to your house tonight. Linda tried to stop me. She kept saying that you were the problem. That you were dramatic. That you wanted attention. That you were trying to take Oliver away. I closed my eyes. And let the pain settle quietly. Of course Linda said that. She had been pushing me out for months. But hearing Daniel repeat the words still hurt. What did you say? I asked gently. Daniel lifted his eyes. Full of resolve. I told her she had crossed a line today. That what she did to you was unacceptable. And that if she couldn't respect you, she would lose access to my home. I inhaled sharply. Not out of triumph. But out of quiet disbelief. Daniel. You didn't need to do that because of me. Yes, Mom. I did, he said firmly. She hurt you. In my home. In front of my child. And she doesn't even feel sorry. His voice softened. I can't let Oliver grow up watching someone treat you that way. I won't let him learn that cruelty is normal. His words touched something deep inside me. A place that had felt empty for years. Daniel leaned back. His shoulders dropping as if he had finally released something he'd been holding inside. Emily cried, he whispered. She said she didn't know what to do. She said she felt stuck between us. And I finally told her the truth. I looked at him gently. What truth? He let out a shaky breath. That I will not allow anyone. Not her mother. Not her. Not even me. To treat you like you're less than family. I blinked slowly. Tears gathering and blurring the edges of the room. My son. My sweet, gentle son. Was finally protecting me. Not because I demanded it. Not because I cried for it. but because he finally saw who I was and what I had endured quietly for so long. He rubbed his eyes again. "I don't know what's going to happen, Mom," he whispered. "But I know this. I'm not going to lose you. And Oliver is not going to grow up without knowing his grandmother." The words broke something open inside me. Not pain, but relief. A slow, gentle, healing relief that spread through my chest like warm sunlight. I squeezed his hand. "Daniel," I whispered, "I love you. And I'm proud of you. More than you know." He nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry it took so long." I reached up and wiped his tear gently. The same way I used to when he was a child. "Sometimes, sweetheart," I said softly, "people see clearly. Only when they are forced to open their eyes." He leaned his head back on the couch, breathing deeply, letting the moment settle. We sat together in silence. Not the cold silence of earlier, but a warm one. A healing one. The kind of silence that brings peace instead of loneliness. After a long while, Daniel spoke again. "Emily wants to talk to you," he murmured. She wants to apologize. She said she didn't handle things right. She said she froze." I nodded slowly. "I understand. She'll come by tomorrow," he said. "And she wants to come without her mother." That alone felt like a step toward something we had all needed for months. Healing. Honesty. Boundaries. Daniel looked at me. His eyes tired, but softer now. "We're going to fix this," he whispered. "Together." I placed my hand over his. "We will," I whispered. And I believed it. For the first time in a long time. I truly believed it. Daniel stayed with me a little longer. Long enough to make sure I had eaten. Long enough to check the burn on my face. Long enough to sit with me until the weight on his shoulders eased. When he left that night, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. "Good night, Mom," he whispered. "Good night, sweetheart." I watched him walk to his car, his figure illuminated by the warm porch light. He glanced back once, gave me a small, tired smile, and then drove away. When I closed the door behind me, the house felt different. Not empty. Not lonely. Hopeful. Something had shifted. Something had softened. Something had begun to heal. And I knew, somewhere deep inside, that the next day would bring a conversation I had waited for a very long time. A calm, honest conversation with Emily, the young woman who would look me in the eye and say the words she hadn't said in months. I barely slept that night. Not because of the pain, though the burn still throbbed from time to time, but because my mind wouldn't rest. Every memory of the day replayed in my head, one moment after another, like pages turning slowly in an old book. Linda's face, Emily's hesitation, Daniel's trembling voice on my porch, the phone call, the silence afterward, and then the small flicker of hope that had settled inside me, like the tiniest candle flame. By morning, I felt stronger. Not fully healed. I knew healing takes time. But steadier. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sun rise slowly. over the quiet neighborhood. The world looked soft that morning. Gentle. As if it, too, had been shaken. And now wanted to calm down. Around 10 o'clock. I heard a car door outside. My breath caught. I stood slowly. Walked to the window. And saw Emily standing by her car. She held her arms close to her body. Her shoulders tense. Her expression uncertain. She was alone. That alone felt like a small step forward. I opened the door before she had a chance to knock. "Emily," I said softly. Her eyes lifted to mine. For the first time in months. Maybe the first time ever. I saw something real in them. Not coldness. Not distance. But guilt. Sadness. Humanity. "Hi, Margaret," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I nodded. "Of course. Come in." She stepped inside slowly. As if afraid the house itself might reject her. We sat in the living room. Her on the couch. Me in the armchair across from her. For a long moment. Neither of us spoke. Then she looked up. Her eyes shiny with unfallen tears. "I am so sorry," she whispered. The words were soft. Fragile. But sincere. Tears filled her eyes. And spilled down her cheeks. One after another. "I froze yesterday. I didn't defend you. I didn't stop my mother. And when you were hurt." Her voice broke. "I didn't even help you." I breathed slowly. Letting her words settle gently around us. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I've been scared," she whispered. "My whole life. My mother has controlled everything. She takes over every situation. She gets angry if I push back. She makes me feel like I owe her something." Her voice trembled. "But yesterday, I realized something. I realized that if I keep letting her control me, I'll lose more than just peace. I'll lose my marriage. I'll lose my family. I'll lose Oliver's chance to have two grandmothers in his life." She looked up at me. Her voice breaking completely. "I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Emotion filled my eyes. Warm and heavy. "Oh, Emily," I whispered softly. "I never wanted you to feel cornered. I never wanted to be part of a struggle. I just wanted to love my family. And be a gentle presence in your lives." She cried harder. "I know," she said. "Daniel told me. He told me everything you said. He told me you've never once spoken badly of me. Or of my mother." And hearing that, she pressed a hand to her chest. "It hurt, Margaret. Because it showed me how unfairly I've treated you." I reached across the small coffee table. And offered my hand. She hesitated for a moment. Not out of fear. But out of shame. Then she took it. Her hand felt small in mine. But warm. Like something trying to heal. "I forgive you," I whispered. "Truly." She looked up slowly. As though she wasn't sure she had heard me right. "I don't blame you," I continued gently. "You're learning. You're growing. You're figuring out how to be a wife. A mother. And a daughter. All at the same time." I squeezed her hand softly. "That takes strength." She sniffled. A faint, trembling smile forming through her tears. "I'm going to set boundaries with my mother," she whispered. "I know it'll be hard. But Daniel and I talked last night. We're going to do it together. And we want you in our lives, Margaret. Not just for Oliver. But for us too. A warmth spread through my chest. Soft, steady. Like sunlight returning after a long winter. I would love that, I said quietly. Emily nodded. Wiping her tears again. Anne. I know this might sound strange. But. I want you to come over tomorrow. For dinner. A real family dinner. Just the three of us and Oliver. The invitation landed softly in my heart. Like a long-lost melody finding its way home. I'd love to, I whispered. Emily stood slowly. Her shoulders no longer tense. Her voice no longer tight. One more thing, she said gently. I want you to know. That whatever happens. With the report about my mother. I understand. I won't ask you to take it back. I won't blame you. I won't make excuses for her. Her honesty surprised me. It touched me deeply. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. She nodded. Then, slowly. Hesitantly. She stepped forward. And wrapped her arms around me. It was not a big hug. Not a dramatic one. It was gentle. Careful. Fragile. But it was real. And in that moment, I knew things were changing. Healing. Softening. When Emily left, the house felt brighter. Even the air seemed lighter. It was as if the weight that had sat heavy on my heart for months was finally beginning to lift. I stood by the window and watched her drive away. Her posture looked different. Stronger. More sure of herself. I whispered a quiet prayer for her. For courage. For peace. And for the strength to break the patterns she had lived under for so long. That evening, Daniel called again. His voice was warm. Relieved. How did it go? He asked. Better than I expected, I said gently. He let out a long breath. The kind of breath a man releases when a storm finally begins to fade. I'm glad, Mom. Really glad. We love you. We want you in our lives. I know, I whispered. And this time, I truly did. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet living room. The evening sunlight drifted in softly, painting the room in warm gold. My cheek still ached. My heart still felt tender. But I was healing. Not quickly. Not perfectly. But gently. I knew the days ahead would not be simple. Boundaries would create tension. Linda would push back. There would be difficult conversations. Moments of discomfort. Maybe even tears. But there would also be honesty. And growth. And new beginnings. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. About my family's future. Hopeful. And steady. Because I had learned something important. Sometimes, healing doesn't start with people changing. Sometimes, healing starts when you finally choose yourself. The drive to Daniel and Emily's home that evening felt different from all the times before. The sky was painted in gentle shades of peach and lavender. And the sun seemed to linger. As if it, too, wasn't ready to let the day end. As I turned into their street, I saw their porch light glowing softly. Warm and inviting. Not bright. Not overwhelming. Just warm. It reminded me of the lights Thomas used to leave on for me. Every time I came home late from work. A simple sign that someone was waiting. I parked the car. And took a slow breath. Not nervous. Just thoughtful. When I walked up the steps, and rang the doorbell. I heard Oliver's tiny coos from inside. That sound alone melted something deep inside my chest. The door opened. And there stood Emily. Not distant. Not guarded. Not cold. Just Emily. Soft-eyed. Warm. And ready. "Hi, Margaret," she said gently. "We're really glad you're here." Before I could answer, Daniel appeared behind her. Oliver resting against his shoulder. Tiny fingers curled around the fabric of his shirt. "Mom," he said, smiling softly. "Come in." The simple invitation. Warm. Earnest. Uncomplicated. Felt like a single candle lighting an entire dark room. I stepped inside. The house felt different. Not because anything had changed physically, but because the air was lighter. Calmer. Like a storm had passed quietly. And left a gentle peace behind. Dinner was simple. Spaghetti, salad, and garlic bread. Nothing fancy. But it was the most meaningful meal I had eaten in years. We talked softly about Oliver. About sleep schedules. About Daniel's job. About little things that felt like stitching together. A quilt that had been fraying at the edges. At one point, Emily reached across the table. And placed her hand over mine. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. I squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for inviting me." For a moment, the three of us sat in a quiet that didn't feel heavy or uncomfortable. It felt like healing. After dinner, Emily offered to make tea. She hesitated for just a moment. A flicker of memory passing through her eyes. But then she smiled softly. "Chamomile okay?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. And it was. Not just the tea, but the moment itself. A simple, quiet moment. That felt like a new beginning. Daniel sat with me in the living room. While Emily prepared the tea. He placed Oliver gently in my arms. And the little boy looked up at me. With those big, curious eyes. That had already changed my world. I rocked him gently. Feeling tears gather. Not from pain. Or sadness. But from gratitude. "Mom," Daniel said softly. Breaking the quiet. "I want you to know something." I looked at him. My hand resting against Oliver's small back. "I'm listening," I whispered. He leaned forward slightly. His voice low. But firm. "You're not alone in this family. You never were. And you never will be." The truth of those words filled my chest with something warm. And steady. I nodded. Unable to speak for a moment. Emily returned with the tea. 3 cups. All placed on the coffee table carefully. Thoughtfully. She sat beside Daniel. Took a breath. And said something I will never forget. "Margaret. I want my son to grow up knowing kindness. Gentleness. Love. And I want him to learn those things from you." My throat tightened. My eyes blurred. My heart softened completely. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you, Emily." When the evening ended, and I stood at the doorway preparing to leave, Emily hugged me again. Tighter this time. More certain. Daniel hugged me too. A warm, familiar embrace. That reminded me of simpler days. When I walked outside, the night air was cool and carried a faint scent of early spring. I looked up at the stars. Small, quiet lights in the dark sky. And felt something inside me settle. Peace. Real peace. Not the peace that comes from keeping quiet, or from avoiding conflict, or from shrinking to make others comfortable. But the peace that comes from speaking truth, setting boundaries, forgiving gently, and letting love grow again. In the empty spaces. As I drove home, a thought touched my heart softly. A truth that felt like a warm hand on my shoulder. Pain may visit your life without warning. But healing comes when you open the door and welcome honesty inside. Families are not perfect. People are not perfect. But love, the quiet, steady kind, has a way of guiding us back to each other. And sometimes, the hardest moments lead to the softest endings. Sometimes, the wound that burned you becomes the wound that teaches you how strong you truly are. And sometimes, the call you fear making becomes the call that saves everything. When I reached my house and stepped inside, I felt something in the air. Something gentle. A new beginning. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Healing. Soft. The kind of beginning you whisper to yourself before you fall asleep. You made it through. You're still standing. And you're finally home.